What's going on? What's going on? Welcome to Kaijutopia. I am Tom. And it's hot. No, not like that's not some elaborate meltdown Godzilla pun. It's like it's just bloody hot outside. I live up in the Pacific Northwest, so we are pretty much just being smothered by forest fires, smoke. Might as well be a kaiju attack. Unfortunately, it's nature, the non-giant monster variety, but hopefully, people who are unfortunately there are people who are closer, to the heat, and I hope they are able to take good care of themselves and stay out of harm's way. Kaiju jokes aside, So today's stream is gonna be very interesting because I get to rank the Heisei Godzilla series, which is one of my personal favorite eras of the Godzilla filmography, the Godzilla saga. I might end up just saying this for every ranking your favorite era Godzilla stream. Yeah, this one is totally my personal favorite. In all seriousness, I like the way I started getting into Godzilla films was by watching both some mostly Showa era Godzilla films, but with a dose of Heisei. And I saw these Godzilla movies when I was very young. I'm gonna share plenty of stories because the Heisei series flat out had a huge influence on me. And yeah, so I grew up. I'm gonna go into more detail about these stories here soon enough, but I couldn't tell the difference between Showa and Heisei. I had no idea. Oh, hey Jean, it's getting choppy again. Yeah, well, sorry about that, y'all. Every time I think my streams are improving, things seem to be fine, and then they're not fine. So, yep, I apologize. I'll keep trying to work on my end. Until then, I'm gonna keep at it, But yeah, I had no idea though that there was a difference between Heisei Godzilla movies and Showa Godzilla movies. So to me, it was all one big Godzilla loving universe, So imagine my surprise when I got older and wiser, and I'm like, oh wait a minute, this Godzilla from Return of Godzilla, he's not the same one from Invasion of Astro Monster. What? Sean, good to see you, my friend. Hi, Tom. A little off topic, but how do you feel about your Horror of Godzilla comic breakdown becoming one of your popular videos? Feels good. It's always nice when one of your videos does pretty well or performs above average, So, yeah. I'm just excited to be able to, cover such an exciting series and, of course, support the official release. Don't just rely on my breakdown videos. I hope people are going out there and getting a hold of these comics like I am. I mean, I was just at Pike Place Market, the Golden Age collectibles place, just the other day, and they had this this incredible rare vintage Horror of Godzilla variant cover. Definitely gonna go back. I mean, I already have a couple Horror of Godzilla comics. There some here. They're somewhere around here, but I'm gonna go in. I think I'm gonna go back and get it because I think it's worth it. What an incredible series! Just as far as how a series begins, the Horror of Godzilla's first issue is already a home run. Okay, so, you know, there's no easy way to do this, but I'm feeling like I'm just going to start with, I think I'm going to, like, I'm going to begin with my least favorite to my favorite, you know? It's a little rough on the edges to do that because, you know, I mean, I could just go. It's like it's the same as me going in chronological order. Well, more like the reverse, I guess. I mean, well, that joke quickly crumbled the moment you really just use just a fraction of your brain. My jokes just they don't land. See what I can quickly manage to do here. I want to bring this up. There we go. All right. And I think I'll like go over the different tiers and such later on. Like different titles or whatever. Usually in the past I do things like Monster King, Apex, Titan, and the least favorite is like -0 or Monster Zero, even though ironically enough those two movies are some of my favorite Godzilla films. So okay, beginning with my least favorite Heisei Godzilla movie. This is already a little bit of a toughie because I like them all, you know. They're all good in their own way. A few are extraordinarily better in most ways than the rest. But I digress. You know, guys, before I get going, this stream it's gonna be pure atomic fire. It's gonna be so good. You'll tell your son about it when he's born. Major Spielberg. Cookie to anybody who caught that reference. It's okay, those in the chat. If you know, if it goes over your head, it's cool. You're all awesome. I'm sure it's not going to go over your heads, though. I'm sure every single one of you caught that reference. All right, least favorite. Godzilla versus Space Godzilla. Space Godzilla. This is going to sound very unusual because those of you who know me very well and have followed me for years know all about how I love Space Gojira. I love me Cosmic Lizard. I think the Crystal King is one of the greatest Godzilla villains of all time. And for what it's worth, he does a fairly decent job here. You know, he's, as far as being the big bad, I feel like, in my humble opinion, and some of you, my fellow power battle enthusiasts out there know that I believe he's like the most powerful villain Heisei Godzilla has fought. Yes, that includes Destroya. Sean, I know you're probably gonna unsubscribe now. I get it, man. But like, I gotta say, Space Godzilla still leaves much to be desired, and you know, one can only hope that, you know, a certain upcoming Godzilla Kong movie with Supernova in the title remedies that, you know, by possibly, so far, we don't know officially, but we are fairly certain that a certain Crystal Gojira from space is gonna play a role. And I'm just hoping they do him justice, you know. With all that said, I mean, I like the Space Godzilla design. I like his powers. I like his sound. There's so much about this monster that I'm that I could dedicate an entire stream to. And indeed, I think we will in the future. But unfortunately, the rest of the film is a fairly mixed bag. I guess since I'm on a pros, I keep going over all the pros first. I'm on a roll here. I love this Heisei Godzilla design. I mean, Heisei Godzilla is, like, for me, the definitive Godzilla. If you agree with me, let me know. If not, please share who's your definitive Godzilla. And I'm not saying he's my favorite Godzilla. He is. Heisei Godzilla is absolutely my favorite, but to me, being the definitive Godzilla kind of embodies everything that makes Godzilla Godzilla, if that makes sense. And the 94 Heisei Godzilla design is so fantastic. I love it. Also, little Godzilla, I get it. The son of Godzilla kind of pisses people off. Not everyone is fond of, little Gojira running around. And I understand the parallels here, the comparisons to Barney and Friends. Unlike Barney, little Godzilla is adorable. Baby Godzilla, who we'll get to that design, that guy looks like he's like high. And not in a good way. But little Godzilla is just a ray of sweet sunshine. I can see why Godzilla was willing to, like, sacrifice everything, put everything on the line just to protect his darling baby boy. Sean, I've always said that Space Godzilla vs. Destroyer could go either way. While I personally lean towards Destroyer, yeah, there it is. Space Godzilla isn't a wrong answer either. Well, thank you for being a mature, thoughtful speaker on this, Sean. Thank you for your 2 cents and not taking my bait. It makes me look bad. I respect you and love you. Thank you for that. I really do like the score for this movie. I mean, it's not like, it doesn't have the grandiose, like, cosmic sense of doom or dread, or like this true clash of titans feel to it. But it does have a real cool sense of discovery, like sort of like a cosmic odyssey feel to it, with like still a dash of dread when, hey, Space Godzilla is coming and it's terrible. And at first, the theme, I can hear it already in my head. The theme of it all, Space Godzilla is coming and it's scary. And then, the music really kind of sells it. I thought the film, though, was very... The plot is just... Well, it's a plot. It's a movie plot that plotted, right? It happened. I feel like it leaves much to be desired. Kind of like torn between what kind of film does it want to be, or it's like trying to be both a space discovery film, which makes sense. I mean, Godzilla's villain, he's going up against Space Godzilla for Mothra's sake, and yet, like, of course, we're largely going to be, earthbound here, which is fine, but I do feel like, man, this movie had a chance to be as polarizing, as divisive, but still fairly interesting as, say, Godzilla vs. Hedorah. And it's a bummer that, it didn't really capitalize on that. I gotta say, the third act is abysmal. I mean, the film itself is okay, but the pacing, seriously, I feel it struggles. There's a lot that I would have left on the cutting room floor. The human interaction drama it's always a mixed bag when it comes to Heisei Godzilla films or Godzilla movies in general. Like the whole subplot of the Yakuza, kidnapping Mickey and holding her hostage. This could have been interesting, but at times there's some very strange camera choices, like close-ups on every time Mickey Sagusa uses her psychic powers. Her earrings look like, they're trying. It looks like they're about to literally tear her poor ear off. It just looks so weird and takes you out of the movie. Yeah, but there's like some interesting parts here and there. I think the characters like Yuki, he's likable, has a vendetta against Godzilla. We find out later, there's more to this movie that connects to Biollante than just Space Godzilla's origin, which, I'll close off on before moving on. My tomologue here is almost complete. But, like, I do feel like overall the movie is very... It's forgettable. I hate to say that. I guess, again, it sounds wrong, and Space Godzilla, my dreaded Lord of Darkness, please, like, I'm unworthy of you. But, like, if I went from Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla straight into Godzilla versus Destroya, I don't feel like I'd be missing anything. I don't feel like there's any huge vital clue. Like, does that make sense? Like, I don't think this, like, it's kind of like when you take, most films have like first, second, and third act. If you remove like the first act or a few key scenes, the movie really does get hit hard, narratively speaking. Like, there's something seriously missing. It's why director's cut exists, right? But this movie, like, if you removed it and nobody knew about it, like, boom, Men in Black, they show up and they erase all of our memories. Every copy of this film, everything about Godzilla versus Space Godzilla, every trace of it is removed. You're not going to realize it. You're not going to watch Godzilla vs. Destroy and be like, I feel like we're missing something. Like, what's this about some cool crystal space monster? That kind of thing. Anyway, I'll close off on Space Godzilla's origin story. It's silly. I mean, even for Godzilla movies. But it is what it is, right? Obviously, Godzilla cells somehow going into a black hole, fusing together with some unknown crystal organism, and then exiting a white hole. Like, it's just campy B-movie sci-fi stuff that so many of us are just used to, and I don't really... Funny enough, I don't even think Space Godzilla's origin story, however absurd it is, and it is absurd, I don't even think it, like... I don't think it holds the movie back, funny enough. Although there's a part of me that does think, like, if they never even tried to explain where this thing came from, I kind of would have liked that a little bit more, just because that would have been funny. Alas... Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla is my least favorite Heisei Godzilla film. What do you guys think about Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla? Sound off, let me know. Godzilla 2005 says, my first Godzilla movie was Godzilla 98. Then my first era of Godzilla movies I watched was the Heisei era, then the Showa era, and then the Millennium era. Nice, good for you, man. Yeah, like Godzilla 98, for all of its hate, it's actually the reason why the Heisei Godzilla movies, by large, came stateside. That's how we got most of the Godzilla movies on this list that we're about to see. Sean says, I have fond memories of Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. I had the DVD with both Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla and Godzilla vs. Destroyer. I remember always begging my grandma to play the DVD over and over. Yeah, same here, same here. And it's the same with my son. Even Godzilla films that I'm not fond of, you know, whatever, they still have that spark, that something that's just so magical, something that's just so impressionable. I mean, that's just the power of Godzilla for you. And yeah, I mean, as far as this movie goes, I know I'm going to see it like 100 more times in my lifetime, I'm sure. So, okay, so what do we got here? My next one, barely better, but still not quite the best of the best, sir, would be Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. Now, the 2 there is mainly, I guess, to differentiate the difference title-wise from the 1974 Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla film and this one, which came out in 1993. They're not connected, unfortunately. It would have been cool. I don't know how they would have explained it. If you can explain and we suspend our disbelief for Space Godzilla, Black Hole, G-Cell weirdness, then, you know, anything's possible. So this movie, to me, like, takes the whole it's a mixed bag to an all new level. I mean, hence why we're moving up, you know, up on the tier bracket here. I think this film had initially a lot going for it. I thought its first act was pretty interesting, all things considered. And it does have a very snail pace way of introducing human characters, and sometimes, even though if it's like, if you're keeping track, the pacing for these movies might, you know, on paper, if you're just writing down the time stamp and all that, it seems to have a pretty good pacing, but they feel a lot longer and monotonous and tedious than they would be, than what their spreadsheet would suggest. But this movie, like, really started strong, and then it, like, started just waffling. You know, it just overstays its welcome. So by the time we get to, like, a real badass finale between, like, Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, with Mechagodzilla versus Rodan thrown in there, and then, you know, Godzilla and Mechagodzilla, Super Mechagodzilla, final battle, all out awesomeness, all of that stuff is just, it's great, and it's most certainly an improvement of Godzilla versus Space Godzilla's final battle, which felt like it lasted an eternity. This one, you know, the fights, they're well choreographed. I mean, the effects look pretty cool, and I gotta say, again, this is definitely the Heisei Godzilla series' best strength, is that their kaiju designs are peak. Now, the Heisei Rodan design, I'm kind of like, I like it. I like the way it moves, it emotes. I like, there are a lot of things that I also kind of dislike about it, but I feel it's less about the design and more about how Rodan is depicted visually, you know, when we get into the special effects, because clearly I forget the name of the VFX supervisor around this time. He does a fairly decent job with what he has, but like, he definitely he struggled with how Rodan, he struggles with showing just how fast these monsters are going. And yeah, so your mileage may vary on that, and if that's, you know, as far as criticisms go, I see it more as a nitpick, if anything. But yeah, the designs are pretty sick. I mean, Mechagodzilla, the Heisei Mechagodzilla design is really good. I don't believe any Mechagodzilla design has ever missed. I think they're all pretty peak. And this one definitely ranks as among my favorites. And of course, when the Garuda joins with Mechagodzilla, forming Super Mechagodzilla, it's It's awesome. I guess I could talk about the little gods or baby Godzilla design. It is what it is, and earlier I joked about how he looks like he's high, stoned, or something, but not in a good way. Um, I do like the twist at first that if you go into this movie blind, you might think, oh, a baby Rodan's gonna hatch. That's why Rodan wants to protect the egg. But then Godzilla showing up seemingly out of nowhere, and you're wondering why. Why are both monsters drawn to this egg for some reason? That's you find out why, and it makes sense. But it's also kind of odd. I mean, one major caveat I have with the Heisei Godzilla movies as a whole is like a lot of interesting plots, subplots that you would think could be directed towards exposition, world building. They only last for one movie, like the musical plants, for example. Like they somehow mysteriously, these plants, like they can sing or something, and they instill Godzilla and baby Godzilla and Rodan like a huge surge of power. And of course Rodan, we get into his Fire Rodan form, which is based. I love Fire Rodan, cool. Although as cool it is, and I get it, it's the Heisei series, beam spamming, plenty of beam spamming. Rodan is like one of the few kaiju that I believe does not need an energy weapon. I mean, with that said, I'm not opposed to it, but I kind of feel like he didn't really need it. And by the way, real quick, the fight between Godzilla and Rodan was so well done. I liked it. I thought it was intense. And my man Rodan held his own against Heisei Godzilla, who is by no means an easy monster to go up against. I mean, that Godzilla, he's the king of the monsters from what I hear, and Rodan gave him a pretty good run for his Zilla dollars. Now, around this time, it's still, it's 1993, and eventually by, what year is it now? 2026. It's been an agonizing long time since Rodan, received the respect he deserves. I mean, it wasn't until the recent, one of the IDW Heisei Godzilla comics that we've seen Rodan finally be depicted as Godzilla's equal in battle. Like, we haven't seen that since, the Showa era, but the Heisei Rodan Godzilla fight was still pretty good, and, I think Rodan is, he held his own in a respectable way. I do think Mechagodzilla, I kind of think it's kind of funny that Mechagodzilla, after, in its first fight against Godzilla, it looks like Mechagodzilla has Godzilla, down, he has him on the ropes, and then, of course, Godzilla pulls an Uno reverse, and Mechagodzilla's cooked, literally cooked. I'm not sure I would have done something like that. I maybe would have tried to, budget better and introduce another kaiju that could have been your cannon fodder kaiju, so Mechagodzilla can prove just how dangerous it is. It's designed to be more than just the anti-Godzilla weapon. But then again, the Heisei Godzilla series, it's funny, even though it's full of very memorable kaiju who we'll get to them. There's so many more to get into. But I feel like, yeah, you could tell Godzilla's the center of everything. Everyone kind of conveniently forgets hey, there's a Mothra and a Batra. We saw King Ghidorah, and there are a couple other mutations out there, but nope. We're gonna put all this money and research into making a anti-Godzilla robot. Well, how would it fare against another monster? What do you mean another monster? Like that giant pteranodon? I gotta admit, Rodan is part of so many great fights in this movie. The Rodan versus Mechagodzilla fight, to me, is actually pretty well choreographed. It's intense. And Rodan, despite, being massively outgunned, literally, still does pretty good and fares a lot better against Mechagodzilla than even Godzilla. And to me, it kind of is a great example of showcasing how, like, even if a character is more powerful than the other, there are certain qualities that can still give a, demonstrably weaker character a fairly good, decent shot at winning, depending on certain key factors, variables, and, whatever the writer decides. As we close off, I want to end on a couple notes here. I think, while I do think the plot is very choppy and it lags horrendously, worse than even my streams, I feel like Akira Ifukube's music, the original soundtrack, is just awesome. Like, if you the moment we get to the title sequence, like the first few minutes of the film, the title sequence, it's just so perfect. I can literally hear it in my head right now. I can't play it because copyright. Toho would own the channel. Not sure if that would be a good idea or not. Hey, Toho, if you're watching, let's talk. I'm open. I'm open to selling it. JK. But yeah, Akira Ifukube's music is just perfect. The Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 title sequence track alone is just one of the best. And of course, the maestro himself. I mean, Ifukube has made, like, I mean, where to even begin with the man? Like, he's the architect of the Godzilla classic theme. Like, and the fact that this still ranks up there with some of his best is, I think, a testament to his ability. And this film, still, like, overall, like, I'd give it a C, maybe a D. Maybe I would add another tier here, like, and just like, maybe I won't get into it too much right now, but I kind of feel like the film, what it might lack in in substance and style, it makes up for by having pretty cool kaiju fights and designs. And, the music is pretty good too. Okay, so what do you guys think? Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2 title always made sense to me, even though the Showa and Heisei films aren't connected. The Heisei one is still the second movie with that title. Yeah, agreed. Fletcher, good to see you. Can you do a tier list on Ultra Q and Ultraman episodes? Ooh, I like that idea. Definitely more into Ultraman the older I get, because Ultraman is awesome and I want to be awesomer. The Ultra Q series, by the way, vastly underrated. Both the old school Golden Era one from the 60s and the I think the Neo Ultra Q. There is a new series, like several years back, and it's got really good stuff to it. The Ultra Q series is really cool. I love the concept, and I want to see more. And of course, Ultraman, awesome. Maybe someday I'll do some Ultraman Tiga, Ultraman Nexus. Do all the cool Ultramans. Starting with my favorites, of course. How we doing, guys? Forgot to ask you wonderful people how you're all doing. I hope everyone is doing fine and dandy. We're about half an hour in, and I got 2 movies already down. Man, we got 5 to go. That's fine. I'm cool. If you guys are cool, I'm fine with taking my sweet time, because I love these movies. I love them so much. Leave a like if you love the Heisei Godzilla series. No, if the Heisei Godzilla series is your favorite era of Godzilla film, like just in general, let me know. Okay, guys. Let's do this next one. I'm going to go back and forth on this one. But let's see. Godzilla versus Mothra. The battle for Earth. I have a soft spot for this film that has slowly but surely only strengthened over the years. I used to think this movie was fairly meh. You know, like I used to been, you know, one of those Godzilla fans that was like, ew, Mothra, she's for girls, gross. Batra's kind of cool though. All the while I'm like still looking at Mothra and just, I didn't know it at the time, but just admiring just how amazing Mothra is. And the design, the kaiju designs, oh, they're so good. And I really like Mothra here. I feel like this is like when most people, maybe before the Monsterverse graced us with its awesomeness, perhaps Heisei Mothra, the Heisei Mothra design is what most fans imagined whenever we would picture Mothra, you know, or hear her iconic sound, her chirp. It's just iconic. I mean, I don't think you can really separate the Heisei Mothra design from Mothra. I mean, the color patterns alone are like, it's just fantastic. And then, of course, there's Batra. Batra is so supremely underrated, it shocks me to this day that we have yet to see the return of the Dark Mothra. Mothra's evil half, or not even evil. Actually, I'd say Batra is, I mean, maybe in the eyes of the humans he destroyed and slaughtered and such, he's evil, but like, honestly, Batra quite possibly is one of the most benign forces in the entire Heisei era. I mean, we're talking about a guy who would probably, like, had he popped up, like, had he maybe woke up a little bit sooner or later and not had to fight Godzilla and get his neck chewed open, probably would have, you know, grudgingly joined forces with Godzilla. I would have paid to have seen that. I mean, imagine Godzilla and Batra joining forces against Space Godzilla or Destroya. That would have been great. Batra being like, he's like the nature's wrath made manifest. We're talking about a being driven purely by protecting the environment from all hostile forces, entities, both domestic and foreign and beyond and alien. But ironically enough, like, despite the fact that Mothra loves humanity and Batra loves nature, Godzilla is that true, enigmatic, neutral, chaotic element that both Mothra, the protector of humanity, and Batra, the defender of nature, see as a hostile force. And that to me is really interesting, because Godzilla himself, and it's one of the few like story threads throughout the entire Heisei era, the entire run from beginning to end, one of the few consistent plot threads is that Godzilla, despite being a natural force, like he's the embodiment of nature, you know, he's like, he represents many things, but it's clear that Godzilla is here to protect the Earth and his territory. Despite all that, he still poses a massive threat, not only to humanity, but to the planet itself. To the point where later on, you know, we have people from the future talking about how Godzilla messed up a whole lot of stuff. Like, he caused a lot of damage. But, of course, then, after, you know, timey-wimey, wiggly-wobbly, you know, shenanigans ensued in the space-time continuum. We would see Godzilla later. By the time of Godzilla vs. Destroy, he is a walking, ticking time bomb. So in a way, Batra and Mothra were correct to see Godzilla as this ultimate threat that they both decided to put aside their differences, and they have huge differences, in order to stop this atomic-powered dinosaur of doom. Now, as far as the human element goes, I do think this movie does a fairly decent job. I mean, it's clearly the opening is, past the, okay, maybe not the title sequence, with the asteroid landing, making impact, waking Godzilla up. I understand if you're, by the way, any filmmakers out there, storytellers, screenwriters, I think it's great that we, want to try and educate audiences about the existential threats posed by climate change and, anthropogenic climate change at that, how humankind is responsible for pollution, environmental devastation. That's extremely important, but I don't see how an asteroid is connected to that, So it looks cool and it's awesome, but perhaps you should have saved the asteroid for Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. Hint, hint. But anyway, I do like how the humans, the movie is clearly inspired by Indiana Jones. Our protagonist, he's this Indiana Jones like character. He's sneaking into some place he really shouldn't be, some hidden temple, and steals something he shouldn't have stolen, and barely escapes with his life. And I love the moxie, the not just the charisma, but the chemistry between him and his ex-wife in the movie. It's a great element. It's a great dynamic, and I think it's at times it's so close. You could tell they're so close to really touching upon a human story that so many films like the Heisei Godzilla movies, again, not to knock this not to pick on the same thing over and over again, but the Heisei films do struggle in the human element. It's true. And I do feel like this sort of thing could have maybe if there was another revision, another script, maybe maybe they took more time to humanize it a bit more. I think the dynamic alone, the connection between the lead character, his ex-wife, and how they're trying to pretty much make amends, form a family again, that could have been very compelling. But anyway, Batra, he's made of so much wind. The movie is decent because of Batra alone, but the kaiju designs are just incredible, immaculate. Next we have Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah. Now I'm sorry about these thumbnails on here, I don't know, I didn't design this tier list. It's a shame that there are parts here that get cut off, like Godzilla's head. Perhaps that's just foreshadowing. Maybe the tier list was designed by a King Ghidorah fanboy, a golden boy, who didn't like how Godzilla took off one of Ghidorah's heads. Even though it's one of the most badass moments, not only in the movie or the Heisei era, it's just one of the best Godzilla moments, period. Okay. King Ghidorah in this movie, let's start with it's his biggest pro. The Heisei Ghidorah design is near perfect. For the longest time, it was my favorite Ghidorah design, surpassed not too long ago by the MonsterVerse Ghidorah, which I believe took the best of both Showa and Heisei, but mainly Heisei Ghidorah, and just perfected it. With that said, the Heisei Ghidorah design is still very, very damn good. If it's your favorite, yeah, I can see why. If it doesn't meet your if it doesn't meet your fancy, if you're like, I'm not overly fond of it, that's fair too. It's okay to express those opinions with me. But my goodness, I love this design so damn much. And yet I wish the design was complemented by just an equivalent origin story. Look, I know the Dorats are cute. To some, I think they look like, I don't know, I think they look like serial killers or something. They give me the creeps. But, like, okay, the whole, like, time travel story plot, it is what it is. I think it was a real cool, interesting twist at the start that, at first we think the Earth is being visited by aliens. The Heisei Godzilla series is finally going and down the alien, rabbit hole. Hey, we might see Heisei Exilians. Who knows what's about to happen? But then, the complete surprise that they're not aliens, but people from the future. That was a cool twist. And I actually like it. And I think it would have been far more interesting instead of, spending time in the past. Maybe exploring the future a bit more would have been really cool. Namely, if, maybe these guys, there's a whole... I don't want to, stay too much into this whole what could have been side of things because I can get lost and, bore everyone to tears. But I think it would have been really awesome if maybe in a bid to convince the humans, of the present day to get them to, do the thing, maybe help them. I don't know why they needed their help again to go back in time and remove the Godzillasaurus to a different location just so King Ghidorah would be born there instead. I mean, this is there's so much about this movie that has really awesome concepts, but it's just underutilized. It's not really well executed. I feel like this film's time travel plot alone could have been an entire era of films in itself. Just quickly imagine for a second if Toho had the time, the money, and the interest to maybe create an additional, produce a companion series along with the mainstream Heisei Godzilla movies. And instead of Godzilla 1954, we got King Ghidorah 1954. Because now it's those three Dorats that merged into King Ghidorah. But then, you're kind of wondering, where has this giant 400-foot tall golden three-headed dragon been hiding all this time? And of course, there's the whole, hey, we're removing Godzilla from the timeline, so he never existed at all. And yet, hey, nothing seems to have changed. Why is that? And there's nothing wrong with that in itself. It just means they failed, or their, time is it's set, right? It's one of those you can't really change the past kind of things unless multiverse theory is real. Who knows? There are times though where I wish the film just owned this sort of thing. Just own it. This is not a plot hole. It's actually things are going exactly according to plan. And the Futurians themselves, aside from Emmy, they're up to no good because in the distant future, in the 23rd century, Japan becomes a major superpower. The superpower. It becomes the most powerful nation on Earth. That would have been a very interesting, other companion film to explore. Both maybe King Ghidorah in the past, and then seeing just why is it that the Futurians are doing what they're doing now. because, you know, these guys are renegades. They're trying to, like, prevent Japan from rising to such power and prominence that they're willing to go back in time and, you know, use King Ghidorah to destroy it, but then Godzilla threatens to comes back to destroy Japan anyway, and it's like, well, wait, why'd you even bother with King Ghidorah at all? It's like, it's just so, I don't know. It's nauseating, man. But hey, a couple cool things about this movie. The score. I mean, again, the maestro, Akira Ifukube, can't go wrong. This score is legendary. And I think it does such a great job at emphasizing just how larger than life and powerful and destructive these monsters are. I think the Mecha King Ghidorah design is pretty cool, and it was a nice surprise. I mean, when I first saw this film as a kid, I wasn't expecting Mecha King Ghidorah at all. And then he shows up at the end of the movie in the third act, and if anything, I'm like, I wish it was an even bigger fight. I kind of feel like Mecha King Ghidorah should have been like the final boss, you know? Not just of the film, but I mean of the Heisei series, of the power hierarchy, guys. I feel like Mecha King Ghidorah should have been like up there, top tier with like Space Godzilla and Destroya, but we can't always get what we want. Let's not forget M11. As silly as the whole scene of him like chasing down a car is, I mean, that whole sequence is just, it's Terminator inspired, but in a way that kind of feels a bit discounty, you know, not one moment it looks badass. I mean, M11 rises, you know, his shirt's on fire, he's badly burned, you can see his android exoskeleton and all that, it looks cool. But then he starts running and chasing after the Jeep, you know, the main character, and it didn't look good then, and nope, it has not aged well. But M11 himself, he's a pretty cool character. And you know what? I'm shocked we haven't seen M11 return in any of the Godzilla comics. I mean, Doctor Who, not that one, but Doctor Who from King Kong Escapes has appeared in a Godzilla IDW Godzilla comic. Like, we've seen so many of you know, these interesting, cool characters from across the Heisei, not just Heisei Godzilla series, but the Godzilla pantheon as a whole. But man, where's M11? I don't know. One thing about this movie that I think is really interesting to this day is the whole how the characters, and one would say Japan, grapples with the nuclear problem. So Japan, of course, is the only country that has been hit by atomic weapons, not once but twice. The United States dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki to end the Pacific War, and eventually it would do just that. It would bring about the end of World War II, yada yada. There's, of course, a lot going into this. I'm not going to go into the history of it because, yeah, that's not what the stream's about. However, I do think this film has so many plots, subplots, so many S-tier concepts upon how each of them could have been an entire film or an entire series. But the one that really is so fascinating to me is how, after losing Godzilla and, you know, realizing they've been bamboozled by these renegade time travelers, the Japanese government decides we need to bring Godzilla back. Not only that, but the characters all discover that the big business billionaire who, what was his name, Shinoda, I think it was Shinoda. He's one of the sole survivors of of this garrison that encountered American forces, and they were all saved by Godzilla by Godzilla when he was the Godzillasaurus, and Godzilla was like literally dying. I mean, they left Godzilla to die because, well, there's nothing they could have done. But there's this powerful scene where Godzilla confronts him, and they have such a really amazing moment where they're both remembering the trauma of war, of violence, of death. And Godzilla, of course, vaporizes him, but this is like one of the best moments in all of Godzilla history, man. And I think, shout out to Up From the Depths, I think he has a whole video dedicated to this scene alone. So be sure to check that out. But like, it's so moving, it's so powerful, but at the same time, it's so very complicated. I have such an array of emotions for this scene alone, and for these characters, because in this movie, it turns out Japan and this conglomerate corporation that Shinoda would pioneer, and becoming an integral part of the Japanese economy. They have a top secret nuclear submarine. They have modern nukes. And Japan, these guys reach a point where they need Godzilla back so badly because King Ghidorah is doing more than just hurting our fifis. He's laying waste to Japan. So now, we need to cross that Godzilla threshold and bring Godzilla back. Well, let's just find out where they dropped the Godzillasaurus, somewhere in the bottom of the sea, right? And hit him with nukes, and boom, we get Godzilla back. And it's just, to me, like, it's one of those interesting paradigms where a country that suffered a great deal, that has suffered a great deal at the hands of nuclear weapons, is now turning to using them under under the guise of it's for the greater good. And I'm not taking a side on whether or not you should ever use nuclear weapons to stop, a greater threat. I mean, that gets into Godzilla King of the Monsters territory. The whole Serizawa's sacrifice, was this a powerful scene, or was it just deeply was it just so insensitive to not only Godzilla but the Japanese culture, the people, and it's just that's its own separate thing. But I'm bringing it up because I feel it's relevant to not only this film and how it has similar themes, but the striking contrast between the two films. Because, ironically enough, both films kind of treat it as a sort of like, unfortunately, we have to use nukes. We have no better option. And at first, it seems like it's going to be a success. The events of King of the Monsters more so, because, it does a good job. It does what it comes at the cost of a great man, but Godzilla's resurrected, or, he wasn't dead, but he's given that much needed boost to save the world from King Ghidorah. But then he turns into a ticking time bomb. And in this film, the 92 version, they go to hit Godzilla with the Godzillasaurus with modern nuclear weapons, only to find out that that whole place was full of nuclear waste. So Godzilla had already been wandering there. One would say that's how Heisei Godzilla came to be in the first place, but I'm not going to take a moment to try and explain how the time travel plot doesn't disrupt the history at all. But as soon as they get there, Godzilla attacks them, and now suddenly he's exposed to modern day nuclear weapons, which makes him bigger, badder, more powerful, but also more aggressive. So both plans of using nuclear weapons to solve a problem, a very big problem, like an existential problem, just makes things significantly worse. And it's amazing to me how sometimes this goes over a lot of heads. The 2019 Godzilla MonsterVerse film, more so. It just astonishes me how people still watch not only that scene, which is one of my all-time favorites. I mean, Serizawa is willing to not only like come to terms with with the demons of his past, like in taking such a sinister, terrible weapon that has brought nothing but pain and misfortune to his people, to his culture, but finding a way to use it in the only good way it could possibly be used for good, to resurrect his god, but it comes at the cost of his life, and then it turns Godzilla into a ticking time bomb anyway. Like, it's such... I really love these sort of movies. I love these stories. Like, the symbolism, it's right there. And it all started with this movie. So, I kind of go back and forth here between Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah and Godzilla vs. Mothra. They're both pretty good, but I do believe Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah edges out Mothra in a number of ways, where I'm like more than likely gonna come back and rewatch this the 91 movie again and again, because as a huge fan of sci-fi, and this movie, I feel like Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah 92 does a far better job at being a sort of like all genre film, and like it does what Godzilla Final Wars struggled to do, which was that movie was literally all over the place. It was trying to be like, it was trying to be both a Godzilla movie and a Star Wars movie and a Matrix movie and an X-Men movie and on and on and on. But Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, like, it wants to be a Godzilla movie, it wants to be a Terminator movie, it wants to be a whole bunch of stuff, but it does, I think, a better job at least making these ideas, these sci-fi concepts, interesting and inspiring. What do you guys think? Let me know. Leave your thoughts, maybe in the chat or in the comment. If you're watching this from the future, what's your favorite Godzilla movie from the Heisei series? Let me know. Or maybe not from the Heisei series. Maybe you're just like Tom. I'm just gonna talk about Godzilla. Stop. You had me right there. Proceed. Sean says, this Ghidorah is also one of the only two versions of the character that isn't an alien. In the rest of the movies, comic, video games, he's an alien. Well, with the exception of GMK Ghidorah, Yamato Ghidorah. He's technically Earth. He's Terran, I believe. Right? Maybe there's something in the... I don't know, in the GMK world building exposition scenes where they mentioned maybe he came from space, but I'm pretty sure GMK Ghidorah is Earthbound. Also, funny enough, I guess Toho had original plans of doing another Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah movie in the Heisei series. Only this time that Ghidorah would have been from space, and I guess they would have tried to explain that, the one that the Dorats were actually genetically modified or bioengineered from the space Ghidorah's DNA, who's actually the OG Ghidorah himself. Would have been interesting if they would have tried to make it Showa Ghidorah, but who knows? It didn't happen. Maybe one day we'll have a stream where we talk about all the Godzilla movies that, didn't come to fruition. You know, all the ones that were that never got the chance, but a lot of them are really interesting. So yeah, I think I like that idea. Perhaps I'll try and make plans to do that by the end of August. We'll see. One thing about Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah is that it felt weird trying to portray the Imperial Japanese in a sympathetic light, especially if you know your history. Yeah, oh man. I think it's one of those things where it might... I'm not saying this applies specifically to this movie. And as I understand it, it's kind of a similar problem people have with Godzilla Minus One. But I think it's important not to conflate a cast of characters who have their own different unique personalities, interests, motivations with, like, in this case, the entirety of, say, Imperial Japan. The entire, like, just sheer batshit crazy, destructive, just immoral sort of, just the entire, I mean, I should just retitle this, like, so Imperial Japan was totally bad. They were the bad guys. I mean, yes, obviously. But I think it's important not to conflate, like, just a group of characters, or in this case, just one, with that. Like, I don't see, even then, if you take one or two characters who happen to be part of, who are, you know, servicemen, they are soldiers, they're fighting on behalf of Imperial Japan, and trying to make it seem like, okay, it's impossible for any soldier in all of history who was ever part of Imperial Japan, they were always evil or bad, because that to me is, that's the same thing, that's just as bad, that's the very thing of, you know, that we're kind of like uncomfortable, you know, in talking about. It's uncomfortable for me to watch any film where, like, the propaganda is strong, because I feel like that in itself is a form of propaganda. I'm not suggesting, like, hey, wouldn't it be interesting to make a movie about, you know, about Nazi Germany, and our main characters, they're part of the Nazi party, but they're actually really good character. They're actually good people. Like, well, first off, best of luck to you in getting this film off the ground. Like, damn. But then, I guess my next question would be, are you basing this off of someone real? And sure enough, yeah, there are plenty of stories of people that defected, who were actually, you know, who were trying to do their part in trying to do some good, even though, like, history might remember them as terrible people. I mean, history is complicated. And I'm not saying something like this, like Schindler's List exists, right? We have a guy who was like affiliated with the Nazis, but, you know, was instrumental in saving the lives of so many Jews, so many people. I feel like, to me, this is something that was like, this is so very hard almost to have conversations with, even, like, this is all one-sided, this is just me talking. So I'm trying to do my best to, like, every time I do these streams, I always try to do my best to, like, Steelman your guys' comments, and, you know, read them, and still try to, like, give you guys a voice without, like, things being so terribly one-sided. But this is one of those things where it's like, we need to, like, this is such a very important topic. It's so interesting, and it says a lot. Like, the commentary alone says a lot about us as a people. I mean, history is just full of good and bad people, and I'm not like fond of the whole there are good and bad people on both sides, because we both know, especially how politically and given recent events, that sort of line will probably forever be tarnished. I think like there is not only a story there, but it's true. So I totally can watch a film where, as an American, I was taught, of course, to, World War II, Americans were the good guys. We're going in, and I believe that we were. Like, I do believe, yeah. Who are our enemies? The Nazis. Yep, they're the bad guys. Who else are the bad guys? The fascists from, the axis of evil. Yeah, they're pretty bad. But I think it would be wrong to say, like, there was not a single good person, like, on the other side of the battlefield. Or, like, in, a distant country that, we're at war with. But, like, it's just so dehumanizing to try and just make such a massive generalization, But it's so easy to, like, think about it. I've been talking about this for like 10 minutes. And it'd be so easy, especially now, to like just clip me. Find like certain moments out of context, or to just completely malign what I'm saying, misrepresent like the core argument, which is like, hey, the Nazis are evil, but like there were probably a number of great Germans who did their best while being ruled by, a cabal of evil men. And then, like, the same thing applies to Japan during World War II. And I believe this is my main defense of Godzilla -1, is that, like, to me, Godzilla -1, I understand, like, why it could be uncomfortable to follow these people who were these veterans who fought in the Pacific War against, if you're American, if you live anywhere in the Pacific areas, not just in America, but like in Indonesia and Taiwan, in these places, in the Philippines, or in China, chances are your relative would not be happy about this. But just realize, the whole point of Godzilla -1 is that these characters, it's like a referendum of Imperial Japan politics. Like, our main character, like, was supposed to die in a kamikaze attack, and he abandoned that and felt shame and was shamed for it, but it was actually the right thing to do. And he was a hero for doing it. Like, the whole movie, like, Godzilla -1 is like a deconstruction of just, like, against almost everything that Imperial Japan represented. It's dogmatic belief that, like, you need to, like, not only were they, nationalists, they believed that they were superior, they were supremacists, that they were the perfect kind of human being, and everyone else were subhuman. But, like, I don't know, like, it's a Heisei Godzilla stream, right? But, like, to me, like, it's just very interesting that these movies can inspire such conversations. But as important as they are, it's also something that you just have to, like, okay, I hope everyone's coming at this in good faith. Let's talk about this. And hopefully, we can communicate our views, our opinions, civilly, but still respectfully, without, like, everyone losing their minds, right? Oh, Speeve, hello! Nice to see you. I say Speeve because I see an S-Beeve. Now, if you're still watching, buddy, let me know what, if you're fine with me calling you Speeve, or if, you have a preferable name, whichever. But It's good to see you. Hope you're doing well. What a interesting segue. All right, we're about an hour and 17 minutes into the stream, and now we are going to choose our next film. Which is the next Heisei Godzilla movie I'm going to pick? I've been going from my least favorites to my favorites, and the next one I pick, Godzilla vs. Destroyer. So right out of the bat, the burning Godzilla design is S tier. Like, holy moly. I remember when I was young, long before this movie, I would ever even see this movie. My local news station, they ran like a little excerpt on this, a segment. And I remember watching, they showed a clip of Godzilla fighting Destroyer. And Godzilla, not only does he look, he's burning Godzilla. He looks like he's dying, right? He looks like he's dying because he is dying. And he's just getting whooped by Destroyer. And as a kid, I see this, Godzilla being my hero. He's up there with Superman. I bawl. I cry. I'm like, oh man, no, not Godzilla. What's happened to him? This movie, does more things right than it gets wrong. And it starts with its kaiju. It starts with the fact that burning Godzilla, S tier design. Destroyer, one of the freaking best Godzilla kaiju out there. One of his best enemies in the Godzilla Rogues gallery. I love how they tie this film back to the 1954 Destroyer, tracing his origin back to the Oxygen Destroyer. This, are you listening, Space Godzilla? This is how you tell a kaiju origin story. And of course, Godzilla Jr., great design, love it. And of course, the ending, I was in tears. It is still one of the best endings to a Godzilla film I've ever seen. In many ways, this movie, it's one of those films where when you think about it, when you look back on it, you either love it or hate it. I love it, but I do think when it's fresh in your memory, when you give it a rewatch, especially if it's been a while, you definitely see its flaws. You definitely see a flaw in its story, in its narration. It does get bogged down. It kind of begins to slow down a bit, even though it's at times it has a pretty good pacing. I mean, it's the end of the world, right? Godzilla's a ticking time bomb. It's a race against the nuclear clock, against the doomsday clock, right? And even if you guys ever get a chance to watch the trailer for this movie, it's intense. But there are times where it feels like you have all the time in the world. I mean, there are a couple bits where the characters are literally going out and dining, talking about stuff, the oxygen destroyer, the micro oxygen thing, all of that stuff. While Godzilla, his mere existence is a threat to the world. Batra was right. Put that on a t-shirt. Batra was right. So, at times it kind of, it pulls you out. It makes you kind of feel like, okay, so is, time of the essence or not? And yeah, there's explanation here. Maybe Godzilla's frozen and they think the day is saved. Oh, whoops, the day is not saved. Now he's going to melt down and destroy us even more or something. I feel like, for the most part, I love how this movie, out of all the Godzilla films up to this point, I feel like Godzilla vs. Destroyer feels like a true sequel to the original 1954 film than every other film before it, and arguably after, with maybe the exception of GMK. And Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, Kiryu, that's another really good movie. Vastly underrated. But Godzilla vs. Destroyer really does feel like, if you were to watch... Earlier I said, like, if you skipped Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, you had no idea it existed, would you feel like watching the Heisei Godzilla series as a whole, that it's missing something vital? And I feel like, no, not really. I like it, but it's skippable, I admit. But if you were to watch the original Godzilla film, Gojira, and then watch Godzilla vs. Destroyer, there is a strong, cohesive connection. Like, there's the continuity, the character, some memorable faces, characters return that we haven't seen in decades. And, your mileage may vary if they have actual arcs or not. I think that's one of the film's problems. That's like definitely its Achilles heel, is that a lot of these characters don't really have much of an arc. It's like they're trapped. They're like, there's never, I don't feel like there's any strong resolution. Some of them, of course, they realize maybe the error of their ways. Oh no, maybe bringing, inventing something close to the oxygen destroyer was a bad idea. That kind of stuff. Hi, Doc Kaiju. Greetings, dear denizens of planet Dirt. Welcome to the Kaijutopia stream. I hope you enjoy yourself. But I do feel like Godzilla vs. Destroyer, like, it has a lot going for it. And I do like this movie. I do feel like this film, it's either overrated or underrated. Sadly, I guess maybe that's the case with just about every film, every piece of art in existence, right? But, like, I do feel like a lot of the criticisms for this film, especially the kind that have become more vocal in recent years, there's legitimacy. Like, the critics for this movie do raise a number of good points. Like, this film really does kind of trip over itself. It's weighed down beneath the weight of its own plot, of what it's setting out to accomplish, and it just doesn't always achieve what it set out to do. And that's okay, but this film was supposed to be, like, at the time, it was going to be the last Godzilla movie. Hence why you're bringing back some characters from the very first 1954 film and providing some closure to characters from that movie. But not exactly in a compelling way, in my opinion. I mean, I do think it's great that they came back, or some of them did, but, like, there's still some unresolved character drama that I think there's still there's an argument could be made that there's some unfinished business that, as far as, their character arcs go for, like, the 1954 film. If we limit it to just that story, I felt like that movie, it's a masterpiece for a reason. And a lot of these characters had satisfying conclusions. But if you're going to bring them back, then I kind of feel like, okay, perhaps their stories could have been expanded upon, and how it could have been interwoven with the modern plot and the present day characters a lot better. But it is what it is. But yeah, Destroyer. Man, I'm hoping we get to see him in the Monsterverse, because Destroyer still to this day is one of Godzilla's deadliest enemies. And just his connection to the oxygen destroyer, and how that's I guess, like, compared to Godzilla now posing an even greater threat than the oxygen destroyer, to the point where you know, a couple films ago, the Japanese government, they were planning, they thought, hey, maybe using nukes are a good idea, actually. And now we go from that to, wow, maybe the oxygen destroyer is a good thing, actually. Like, it's still kind of funny. I love the theme of how, like, you know, maybe we shouldn't keep relying on doomsday weapons and believing that these weapons of mass destruction is going to solve our problems. Maybe there could be another way we could, I don't know, save the world. All right, we've come down to the final two, and funny enough, they're the first, they're the Godzilla films that started the whole Heisei era. But first, I'm going to go get a drink. I'll be right back, everyone. Be good. Hey, Cage Utopia. Sorry I'm late. Andrew, no worries, man. I think you arrive like Gandalf precisely when you mean to. Totally cool. I need the giant condor in the Monsterverse. Hey, man, I mean, if that would mean it's the end of the Monsterverse because the giant condor is like, whew, that right there is everyone's kryptonite. I can't see anybody beating the giant condor. You might think, oh, well, Godzilla beat the giant condor. No, the giant condor let Godzilla. That's what happened. I don't know what movie you guys watched. What I saw was Godzilla begging the giant condor, just begging for his life, and the giant condor was like, you know what? I like your movies. I'm gonna let you shoot me in the face, and I'm gonna pretend to crash in the ocean like a charred turkey. Okay? Exactly what happened. All right, everybody. So, like, one of my fondest memories as a Godzilla fan is my first Godzilla movie. I mean, you never forget your first Godzilla experience. And I remember as a kid, I forget how old I was, but like, I remember going to this video store. It was privately owned. It wasn't like a chain. It wasn't like a Blockbuster, which was great, by the way. Great times. But like this one, I went in like so many times, and every single time I would rent the same movie over and over again. The American version of the Return of Godzilla film, Godzilla 1985. And this movie I watched like religiously, man. I mean, it was like the only thing I'd ever want to watch because I you know, I'm a little boy. I love dinosaurs, so it made sense for me to like connect with Godzilla. I remember at first though when the very first time I saw this movie, I didn't even choose it. My mom picked it out from the movie store and played it on TV. And I just remember like seeing Godzilla on the TV for the first time, and my mouth is like literally like it's touching the floor. I thought it was real because my mom loved watching the news, right? So that's usually all that would be playing on TV. So seeing this made me think, whoa, there's a giant monster attacking the city downtown? Cool. But yeah, I remember like going personally, I thought it was like, it became my personal mission to join my mom every time she's like, hey, I'm going to the video store. You want me to get anything? Want me to pick up anything? And I'm like, I'm going. And everybody knew what that meant. I'm going to pick Godzilla. And it was the same movie over and over again. Godzilla 1985 starring Raymond Burr. And it reached a point where even the video store owner decided to just burn a copy of the film. He gave me my own Godzilla VHS 1985 copy, and I wish I remember his name, but that was a moment I would cherish forever, and I watched that movie so many times. And of course, imagine my surprise to find out that like, oh, this is the American version. There's still the Japanese version, which is the true version, you know, how it was originally meant. And since then, like, this movie it's aged well. The Return of Godzilla, I feel like, is a film that is right up there in terms of its importance, its prominence. I feel like even though it's overshadowed by its 1954 counterpart, I believe it's just as important, at least thematically and conceptually. Its core tenets are relevant even to this day. I mean, the threat posed by nuclear powers is just as unfortunately a reality as like then as it is today. And the way this movie juxtaposes Godzilla with the Cold War it's done really quite well. I mean, I just watched this movie again recently, and I'm kind of blown away by how it's still like it just holds up. Like, it just amazes me how, like, yeah, this was like over 30 years ago. Almost, well, not just 30 years, like 40 years now, right? Like 42 years old, give or take. Nobody, I'm really good at math. Let's just go with it. But yeah, it still holds up to this day, and still, like, it amazes me, like, how even the politics, the geopolitics, have they really changed a great deal? Are they really that different? And yes and no. Like, it's still crazy how, like, this film, like, what happens is, like, Godzilla takes out a Russian nuclear sub, or more accurately, a Soviet nuclear sub, and the Soviets think the Americans did it. So, like, America and NATO, they go on high alert. The Soviet Union and the Warsaw countries, they're on high alert, and it feels like a nuclear war. It's like it's reminiscent of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and Japan, like, comes in at the last moment with evidence that, like, hey, good news, everyone, the Americans did not destroy the Soviet sub. You don't have to destroy, go engage in a nuclear war now. Oh, okay, that's good. What's the bad news? Oh, yeah, Godzilla did it. This movie's like themes of the existential threat posed by nuclear weapons is arguably more prevalent than even the 1954 original, which back then it's like, yes, atomic weapons bad, and yes, they can seriously mess up a country, but by the time of 1984, we have nuclear weapons that are hundreds of times, if not thousands of times, more powerful than the ones dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Well, I mean, those were atomic weapons. Now we have hydrogen bombs. Now we have weapons that are literally, we could destroy the planet 1,000 times over. Like, if anything, if Godzilla 1954 was about how a nation is still struggling with the threat posed by atomic weapons, well, the Return of Godzilla is about how the entire world is literally just a heartbeat away from complete Armageddon. This film, it's got such a dark atmosphere to it. It's got this real true feeling of dread, this creeping dread that at any moment, like, we could lose everything. And then there's Godzilla, who is just like, he's like, he may not like be as instantly destructive as a nuclear weapon, but because he's a living nuclear weapon, and how even in the face of nuclear Armageddon, Godzilla would be like the sole survivor. He would inherit the Earth. He would inherit like a world of ruin. The king of ruins. So like, it's just this, such a, like, just an uncomfortable, like, it's an uncomfortable feeling, but like, I guess in a good way, because you're supposed to feel that way, right? And it's a credit to the film, but it's like, just, it's a film that is multi-layered, has so much symbolism that even to this day has inspired, like, it's one of the main inspirations behind Gareth Edwards' Godzilla 2014. It's inspired Godzilla -1. I'd say it inspired Shin Godzilla as well. It really is like one of those unappreciated films that I'm still like, I feel like if it came out recently with some tweaks, or maybe, sorry Godzilla fans, not to be that guy, but with if used with modern day visual effects, like the Godzilla -1 VFX team did this film, I'm certain it would be seen in a far greater light, which is a shame, because the film, for what it's worth, looks and is visually stunning. It's got that 80s aesthetic, that 80s cinematic aesthetic that is just so unique to that time period, that I feel like, for the most part, it still holds up to this day. There are so many exciting scenes and sequences that will have you like at the edge of your seat, that it's just so mesmerizing to witness. Like, Godzilla's fight with the Super X is intense. You kind of forget, like, when you watch and see how well this film, how everything is shot, how its action sequences are done, how we see Godzilla fighting in the ruins of Tokyo against the Super X, you kind of forget, oh yeah, Godzilla is the only monster in this movie. Well, unless you count mankind. Man is the only true monster. And in certain ways, like, yeah, it's really like, at this point, like at the start of the Heisei Godzilla film series, even though I think technically it's 1984, so it's still technically part of the Showa age. But it's no doubt the beginning. It's the movie that kickstarted the whole Heisei era film. Sorry, I need to drink some water. I'm like, oh, I'm thirsty and it's still so hot and damp in here. This movie is like the main, like, I'd say it's one of the most important Godzilla films, I'd say, to watch when you're thinking long term. Like, I grew up watching this movie, and there's so much that went over my head. I mean, it was supposed to. I was a kid. That's a terrible excuse. When I was a kid. Like, one of my fondest memories was watching this movie, Godzilla, well, The Return of Godzilla, but Godzilla 1985 and Godzilla vs. Biollante back to back whenever my mom and I would go on a road trip to go see my grandpa, who lived in Montana. So I would be in the back of our pickup truck. You know, it was sealed, so it's not like I was exposed to the elements or anything. But I would be in the back, and we'd bring aboard like this portable TV with a VHS player. I'd have all my snacks and my sleeping bag and my Godzilla toys, and for the next 9 hours I'd be watching this and Godzilla vs. Biollante and other Godzilla movies. But it became like an annual tradition to watch this movie and Godzilla vs. Biollante. Oh, man. Good times, but definitely the older you get, the more mature you become, and hopefully you become multicultural. You become more aware of the world beyond just, in my case, just my American lens, and seeing that, there's so much happening in the world. And throughout history, it's just seeing how significant this film has become, and it plays such an important role in the Godzilla film series. I feel like this is the movie that, if I could, it was not only my first Godzilla movie, I kind of hope it's the last one I get to watch someday. I hope when I'm older and I can go back and watch this movie. My only hope truly is like that times have changed significantly, that nuclear weapons are no longer a threat, and I fear that will never change, but I hope it does. If anything, this movie will either like continue to be a sort of kaiju Nostradamus, a Nostradamus of the Godzilla series. It will continue to, like, its predictions will continue to be on point. It will unfortunately age well, and by that I mean a lot of its symbolisms, a lot of its what it's trying to warning against will be just as important as ever. And here's hoping things change in a way that it eventually becomes obsolete. But until then, it is still one of my all-time favorite Godzilla movies, but it's not my favorite Heisei Godzilla movie. Before we get to the last final one, let me read some of your comments. Gotta scroll up here. Ah, yeah, more Giant Condor. Giant Condor's OP. True. First, I saw King Kong versus Godzilla, but first I remember Godzilla 1985. My parents bought it when it came out. I was like 1 year old. You remember that when you were a year old? Your memory is incredible. Far better than mine. Godzilla 1985 is underrated. Yeah, to an extent, I would say, yeah, I love the fact that Raymond Burr returned to reprise his character as Steve Martin. I do like that they shot additional stuff for just the 1985 version, but I really don't like that they you can tell it's definitely it's got its problems. I'll just leave it at that for now. But yeah, if I can add an ultra monster into the MonsterVerse, it would have to be the Gavidon type because he is adorable and my favorite kaiju. Man, that's cool. I want to see Godzilla versus Alien Bolton. That would be a pretty good fight. Godzilla 1985 is racist against people who like nuclear warfare. Okay. Let's see. There's a lot of canceled Godzilla films, mainly from the Heisei era. Like, I found one canceled film called Godzilla versus the Divine Beast. Interesting. Yeah, I think I should definitely have a whole stream dedicated to just going over all the, Godzilla films that could have been but never were. Oh man, Doc Kaiju, you brought up Suncoast Video. Oh, I loved going to Suncoast. I wish I could say that's where I first, found out about Godzilla versus Biollante, but it's not. So, I just went through talking, reminiscing about, going to the video store and renting Godzilla 1985 over and over again until the video store owner is just like, hey, I made you your own copy. Now you don't have to keep renting my only Godzilla 1985 copy. Now you can have one of your own. But I had no idea. Godzilla vs. Biollante was a complete unexpected joy to discover. I mean, I don't even remember the video store itself. I think it was just connected to some grocery outlet, but obviously those of you old enough to remember video stores, right? I mean, I'm sure they still exist, right? But there are still video aisles. You can go to a Best Buy electronics store and find Blu-rays, DVDs, and it's still awesome. But there's back then it was more it really did feel like going to the movies. What it feels like to step foot in a movie theater, like a Regal Cinemas. You could smell the popcorn, you could hear some movies playing in the background. There's this great feel to it, and the same. It's just going back then. It was going into a Blockbuster felt like an adventure in itself. But almost every video store had that feel to it. And when I went to this one in I can't remember the name of, but I had a very predictable routine. My mom knew all about it. I would make a beeline for the sci-fi section, and I would always be looking for Godzilla movies. It didn't matter if I've seen them before or not. I mean, I heart Godzilla. I see Godzilla. I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna rent it all over again. But every once in a while, there is that incredible, amazing feeling of going to the Godzilla section and discovering a new Godzilla movie that you never knew existed. It's almost as if the universe made it just for you out of providence. now we live in an era where you pretty much know about like a new Godzilla movie long before you ever see it. So I want you to imagine what it must be like to like walk into a movie store, walk around and see something like Godzilla -1 or the Monsterverse, like Godzilla versus Kong or Shin Godzilla, and never knowing it like existed, never knowing they existed until that exact moment. That's the shock, the surprise, the excitement, all of that. Like that was like I forget how old I was. Let's just say I was like 8 or 9 years old at the time. That was what I was feeling when I saw Godzilla versus Biollante. And yeah, this amazing poster of Godzilla standing like in front of Biollante in a rose form. It's the stuff of legends. Like the Heisei Godzilla movie posters. I know I haven't talked about it, and a lot of these are just using the made in a like released in America like covers, the US covers, like Godzilla Mothra, Mecha Godzilla, Space Godzilla here. These are like the the covers for the US release. But the Godzilla versus King Ghidorah here, this is the whew, I forget the name of the artist. I feel so bad. But the Godzilla, Heisei Godzilla movie Japanese posters are just chef's kiss all over, just incredible. I'm always going to be jealous of Japan, not just because they, they make Godzilla movies and like I love going there and they have a bunch of stuff, the pop culture alone I'm in love with, but like their Godzilla posters are just 9 times out of 10 better than anything we produce. Speaking of producing things that are just incredible, Godzilla vs. Biollante is just a true work of art, a stunning achievement that even though I feel like the Return of Godzilla has that retro 80s cinematic vibe, that aesthetic, that unfortunately all the other Godzilla movies in the Heisei era, from Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah all the way up to Destroya, they don't really have that cinematic aesthetic, that vibe. Like, I know I'm gonna make some enemies here, but like most of these movies feel like direct to DVD productions. Like made for TV feel during the 90s and the early 2000s. Now, I don't mean that like, I'm sorry, I know that sounds bad. That sounds like such a huge diss, and I guess in some way it is, but I don't mean it that way. I just mean like when you look at the cinematography, when you look at the quality of the film productions themselves, I know there are some standout moments here and there. There are some great moments, in fact, but most of the Heisei Godzilla films really do have that made-for-TV energy. Like, but there are 2 exceptions. One is the Return of Godzilla, and then Godzilla vs. Biollante, which to me, even though Return to Godzilla had that quasi-cinematic feel, Godzilla vs. Biollante from beginning till end truly has that movie-going experience, that immersive feel, that like I could just close my eyes and I could feel like if I'm trying to think picturing the final battle or the Super X2 launch sequence, you could just hear the incredible soundtrack for starters. But you could just feel like you've been transported to a different world and you're witnessing something truly special. And then there's Biollante, who is like one of the greatest kaiju. One of the best kaiju of all time. I mean, bar none. Her design is perfect. Her execution is perfect. Her roar, her sound, perfect, perfect, perfect. Biollante is beautiful. She is perfect just the way she is. And I know there are some Godzilla fans who might, I don't know, be opposed to this, but I would love for her to return. Not because, like, why? There's no way she could, be any better. It's not about being better. I mean, she started off perfect, and now it wouldn't hurt. Like, Biollante crossing over, making that transition into, say, the Monsterverse, I think this is a win-win. Or maybe Toho adapting her for a Godzilla -1 sequel, or a modern day Godzilla film. Cool. I would love to see Biollante come back, because guess what? Despite how perfect she is, there's plenty of room for growth. No pun intended, because she's a Godzilla plant monster hybrid. I feel like there are so many cool things you could do with Biollante that to keep her limited to just one movie, no matter how great it is, I mean, it's one of my all-time favorites. I mean, it's the top-ranked Heisei Godzilla film on my ranking list. But even still, just like how Godzilla himself is, like, there's still, like, there's almost, 40 Godzilla movies? I think we could have 400 Godzilla movies, because Godzilla is, like, that amazing. Like, there's so many different ways of depicting his character and using the Godzilla character. There's so many different ways of designing him that I think the same thing applies to Biollante. Since earlier I've been sharing some personal Godzilla stories, this movie is also it already had a special place in my Godzilla loving heart, but like several years ago something happened that made it even more special. So like I popped in my Godzilla movie, Godzilla vs. Biollante copy, and right around the final battle, Biollante returned. It's awesome. It's like a perfect template of how to shoot and execute a Godzilla scene. It's just stunning imagery, sound, score, everything. It's so good. And I remember right as Godzilla and Biollante are about to, get in a fight. They're about to fight to the death. My wife comes up to me and shares that, the news that I'm going to be a dad. That she's pregnant with our son. And now, every time I watch Godzilla vs. Biollante, right as we make it to the third act with Godzilla and Biollante, I remember the Dr. Shirigami quote about how, like, they're not brother and sister. They're both the same creature. And they're about to engage in this massive, like, seismic battle. Now, every time we get to that moment, I'm reminded of finding out that I'm going to be a dad, and I think about my son. And of course, I watched, in prep for this stream today, for the past week, I've been watching the Heisei Godzilla movies, and I watched Godzilla vs. Biollante with my son Logan, and I didn't share with him yet. I mean, he's 6 years old, so maybe someday I'll tell him when we watch this movie again, we get to the final battle. I'm like, hey, so son, did you know that, like, years ago when I was watching this movie, this is right around the moment where your mom told me that we were, going to become your parents. I'll leave it to more creative minds to try and explain how that's somehow like a perfect representation of this of the plot, of like its themes of how, you know, scientists should never play God and bring life into this world, as that life could eventually grow into a grotesque, rampaging rage monster, and, you know, totally not in any way symbolic of being a parent, of having and raising a child. Oh no. So, like, moving on, I mentioned earlier that I feel, even to this day, Heisei Godzilla is, like, the definitive Godzilla for me. And I'm like, I love the MonsterVerse. You can call me a MonsterVerse fanboy. I'll take it as a compliment. I simp for Legendary Goji. He's truly become one of my favorite adaptations of the character. And of course, Godzilla -1, incredible. I mean, there are so many amazing different Godzillas to choose from. But like, I feel like, and it might maybe it's just the nostalgia of it all, but nostalgia has a rightful place in our hearts, in our minds. Heisei Godzilla is still to this day the first monster, the first design I picture whenever I think about Godzilla, is the 1989 Bile Goji design. This is still my all-time favorite Godzilla like design. It's the look, the sound, all of it. It's just so captivating. Like it screams power, but still there's something so much more beneath the surface. I mean, you look at Godzilla, and of course there are so many great close-ups of him snarling in this movie, and you see this powerful, dangerous creature, this unstoppable force. But there's still this certain, maybe it's the lighting, maybe it's this the expressive nature of, you know, the suitimation. Like, major credit to the filmmakers involved here, because they knocked it out of the park. And then some. But, you know, there is still this burning intelligence, this awareness that exemplifies the King of the Monsters in a way that you'll never forget. I love this movie so damn much. And I know earlier I said maybe Return to Godzilla will be the last Godzilla movie I ever watch. Hopefully, if nuclear weapons are no longer a threat, right? Then we'll have truly come full circle. But like, I feel like Godzilla vs. Biollante is one of those, now I guess, classics that resonates even to this day. I mean, bioengineering is so... I know AI, all of that, it sucks. I mean, AI has its usefulness, and there's utility to it. But yeah, it absolutely sucks that AI is just shitting all over the arts. And I can't stand, like, seeing my social media timeline just fill with AI slop. I can't stand it. But I guess where I'm going with this, even though AI has become like the new thing, like even now, like there are of course massive problems with AI. I do believe it's still, it might be louder, it might be more irritating, like you can't ignore, but even AI is doesn't even compare to bioengineering, to the study of biology, to just all the, well, to like what's the core thematic theme, like what's Godzilla versus Biollante warning us about? I mean, you have a scientist who plays God, and Dr. Shiragami, by the way, is one of the most interesting characters. Like, I feel like he's unfortunately forgotten, massively underutilized, underrated. But Shiragami is great, and of course, I'll get to her, the GOAT herself, Miki Sagusa. I haven't forgotten. But I feel like the whole point of Godzilla vs. Biollante is like it's warning us about it's not just saying bioengineering bad. We should never, science is bad. We shouldn't science. It's not saying that. But much like how I'm like not saying we shouldn't, using AI as an analogy again, I'm not saying it shouldn't exist or we shouldn't use it, we shouldn't have it, but we shouldn't abuse it. We shouldn't meddle with forces, with things that we don't even we don't fully comprehend. We don't even like quasi understand. We don't even like, we have a very limited understanding of what we are meddling with. So instead of meddling with it, we should understand it, which is the pursuit of science in itself, knowing and understanding how things work. And it would be nice if we could do so safely and efficiently. But of course, if you're gonna like splice Godzilla's DNA with a plant, and I don't know if Shiragami meant to do this, but inexplicably create a vessel for the soul of his dearly departed daughter, then holy shit. Erika Shiragami, by the way, is such a, like, this is again, I'm gonna simp hard for Biollante again. This is another example of how interesting Biollante is that Biollante is is like a plant Godzilla hybrid. So like she has the strengths of both Godzilla and a plant. It's why I believe Biollante, if left unchecked, and Godzilla should pray to Mothra, thank Mothra that Biollante has a kryptonite like weakness to Godzilla's heat beam, because if she didn't, I mean, I know she's a plant and you'd think plant, fire, not a good mix, but I do think that Biollante, if left unchecked, could have become such a... I believe she's actually one of the most dangerous monsters Godzilla has ever fought. And I'd give her good odds against most heavy hitters, by the way. You could almost argue she could fight Destroya, she could take on Space Godzilla. I could see her defeat Mecha Godzilla. I think Biollante could take on, like, mop the floor with most, if not all, of the monsters Godzilla fought in the Millennium Era. Like, Biollante is S tier, okay? She is dangerous. She's powerful. But one of the things that makes her so interesting is that here is this monster, and in the belly of the beast is the soul of a human being. And though I do think it's not explored much, I honestly think it's probably for the best, like left, to the interpretation of the viewer. Let us like think about it like as I am now. Here, like nearly like what, almost 40 years since this film's inception. But man, this movie is so... I love it, man. Like everything about it. Like just I love the conversations it starts. Namely like Erika Shiragami. Like there's a whole like group in the Godzilla online community that like every once in a while we'll talk about her, and it inspires so much discussion. And I would say like the imagination, like it stokes the flames of our imagination, and in a good way. And then there's Miki Sagusa. We see the introduction of a huge, well-deserved fan favorite. And I would say, even to this day, she is probably, and deservedly so, the most popular human character in the Godzilla series. And I'm talking from Showa to present day. Miki Sagusa, Miki is such an interesting character. And out of all the characters in the Heisei Godzilla series, I'm happy to say she does have a character arc. She does embark on a journey. And in the beginning, she, sees Godzilla as a monster, and she even tries controlling him. But then, over time, she does what I can say with confidence many of my fellow Godzilla fans have come to see for ourselves and, experience for ourselves. These monsters are characters too. They have feelings too, right? That's what that means. And it's so nice, and it's another reason why I love like current iterations of the characters of the kaiju, because you have filmmakers like Guillermo del Toro and Micah Daughtry, who see monsters as characters, as kind of like kin, like they see them as just like they see as human characters, as human beings in a way, or at least they can relate to the monsters because they, like human beings, have feelings, they have wants and desires, motives. And, if in the hands of a great storyteller, they have character arcs. So it's really nice that Miki kind of pioneered that in a way. Like she originally saw Godzilla as a destructive monster, and she doesn't like deny the fact that, oh yeah, Godzilla is a threat. Absolutely. He absolutely should be. We should take that seriously. But she does see him as like kind of like he, and later on his son, they deserve life just as much as we do. They deserve a shot at living a good life as much as the next human being. And I think that's actually quite telling, and a true testament to her character and her contribution to the Godzilla mythos. Okay, let's read some comments as I think about what if there's... I mean, obviously there's so much I can go on about this movie. I could gush about like the score, namely the Super X2 launch sequence, lives rent-free in my mind. So let's see. Who wins, Monster X, Kaiser Ghidorah versus Destroya? Oh man, my short answer for you is Destroya, but it would be a pretty good fight. Long story short, I do think Monster X would literally run circles around Destroya, but Destroya can, um, well, Destroya can afford taking heavy hits, and one would argue heavy losses to its colony, because it's basically a micro colony, like a hive-minded creature. It can afford taking heavy damage because it can reform, it can come back good as new, right? Monster X and of course Kaiser Ghidorah can't risk losing, like sustaining heavy damage. Whereas Destroya can, and Destroya absolutely is fully capable of inflicting serious life-threatening injuries to both Monster X and, Kaiser Ghidorah. But long story short, let's not forget Kaiser Ghidorah. One thing that makes him such a menace, such a powerful kaiju, is that after he beats you, bludgeons you, drags you around with his gravity beams, once he weakens you, he's gonna reel you in, and then he's gonna sink his teeth into you, and then like a three-headed bloated vampire, he's gonna drain the life out of you. He's gonna drain you of your life force. But see, Destroya's life force is the oxygen destroyer. It's flat out explicitly stated. Destroya draws its energy from the same unknown energy that the oxygen destroyer taps into. So I don't think Kaiser Ghidorah wants to. I don't think he wants that in his systems, and yeah. So I think Destroya wins, but it's a pretty good fight. Oh, Doc Kaiju still has his Godzilla 1985 VHS tape somewhere. Nice. I don't think I still have mine, sadly, but man, if you do, hold on to that. Get that preserved. Or what are those what are they called? Those time machines, those things, you take some cool belongings from your time period and you bury it, and maybe in 30 or 100 years people will find it, and I forget what they're called. So chat, you look it up, tell me if you know. Jimmy says, jumping in to show support. I'll catch this one later, but always appreciate what you do. Thanks, man. Thank you so much, Jimmy. I appreciate that. He goes on to say, pumped for the new Destroy All Monsters melee game featuring Heisei Godzilla so heavily. Hoping to see more footage soon. Agreed. I'm super pumped for the Godzilla Destroy All Monsters melee game. It's about time. But yeah, Jimmy, thank you so much for the kind words. Happy that you came in, dropped by. And please let me know what your favorite list is. Give me your rankings for, how would you rank the Heisei Godzilla series? Would love your input. Time capsule, yes. Thank you, guys. Yes, time capsule. There it is. Andrew says, Blockbuster. I remember Blockbuster used to be a thing, but now that we have Netflix and everything, Blockbuster is sadly obsolete. And yes, but there still might be one more Blockbuster left. It's the very first one. I think it's in Bend, Oregon, although if memory serves, it closed recently. I don't know for sure, but I remember actually going there when I visited Bend, Oregon. There were some relatives there a couple years back. So happy to say I've been to the first and last Blockbuster. Usually is a huge tourist attraction too. Doc Kaiju says, I dream sometimes about watching a movie with Godzilla, Anguirus, and Hedorah. Interesting combo there. I think about, Godzilla crossing paths with Hedorah again. I mean, I made a Godzilla -1 Hedorah stop motion movie last year, but incorporating Anguirus is an interesting choice. Ooh, even dreamed about finding a standalone Anguirus film. You know what? Sign me up. Our spiky boy deserves more love, and if it means giving him his own movie, then I say go for it. Godzilla vs. Biollante is so underrated and hated. Like, I don't know why people hate it so much. I actually enjoy the film, and it gives us a great opportunity to expand the lore of Godzilla's DNA. Maybe I'm like, I don't know, I'm in some echo chamber under hiding, living under a rock, but like, I don't think Godzilla vs. Biollante is hated. I know it's underrated. I mean, just about every Godzilla movie you could argue is, depending on, our own respective, interests and our own lists and such. But like, I don't think it's hated. I hope not, anyway. Hiya, Kevin says, hello, I just found this stream while scrolling on my home page, and damn, that list. Oof. Hiya, Kevin, if you're still here, well, first off, I like the name. I want to call you Hiya Toys, but hiya, Kevin. What's your list? By all means, share your, like, how would you rank your Heisei Godzilla movie list differently? Definitely open to getting more opinions here. But I am a bona fide Godzilla master, and like, there's a difference between opinion and facts, right? And I'm like, these are not my opinions. I'm just an expert on the topic. So like, Penelope, is that you? Oh, my cat is meowing. That's because we are 3 minutes away from their dinner time. What a good way to just make me shut up. My cats are really good about making me shut up, that's for sure. We'll see if she comes in and gives us a visit. Anyway, Kevin, in all seriousness, like, by all means, please share your opinion. Let me know what you think. How would you rank the Heisei Godzilla series? Would love to get your input on that. Andrew says, this made me realize something. Because of them using Godzilla's DNA to create Biollante, what happens if they use something else instead of a plant? Exactly. Also, Andrew, I would look into the original, like, how Godzilla vs. Biollante was made. It was I guess a contest, a screenwriters contest, and this movie went through many different drafts. So there are some interesting ideas, concepts that I think you might find interesting. Alright, guys, this is my ranking of the Heisei Godzilla movie franchise. I cannot stress enough how much I love the Heisei Godzilla series. I love all these movies. I understand, like, everyone is going to agree, disagree, which is why I say, please share your list in the comments down below. I would love to hear from you. What is your favorite Heisei Godzilla movie? Why or why not? Do you agree or disagree with me? It's cool. Because at the end of the day, if we're all Godzilla fans, then we are winning. On that note, it's time for me to go feed my fur babies. My animals are calling. So I would like to thank you all for tuning in to today's stream. It was a blast. I love talking about Godzilla. I love I love spending time with you wonderful people. So thank you so much for your support. And yeah, so hey, thank you everybody. Take good care. I love you all. And I will see you all next time.